Hey everyone, and welcome back. Now today we're going to be talking about the overall crypto market because there's just been some pretty wild stuff. What's happened in the past probably 24 hours or so, I'm not sure that many people predicted. Obviously anything can happen in the crypto market as we're seeing today, but I think it's caught a lot of people by surprise, and so I want to talk a little bit about kind of why and what that means and a lot of these different types of things. So anyway, let's go ahead and dive right in. So starting out, as we can see, basically a pretty strong green day overall. We're seeing BGB, HBAR, and Pengu kind of leading the way, followed by Curve and then Jasmy. Jasmy was seeing a really nice bounce to the upside, which is really good. But as we can see, almost everything is kind of moving up. We can see a couple ones down on the day. KuCoin's coin is down, Aptos is down a little bit, FTM's down a little bit, Athena's down a tiny bit. Same thing with OM and Caspa as well. So we're seeing essentially a couple down here and there, but overall the entire market looking pretty decent. We can see Bitcoin up 5% in just a day. Really nice. If we look at the week, we are still red, but we can see a lot of these gains kind of pulling back a little bit. Yesterday when we looked, Bitcoin was down 8% or down 11%, excuse me, now down only 8%. We can see virtual and hyperliquid now positive for the week. We also can see Jasmy is now only down 12%. When we were looking earlier, it was looking closer to like 20-25%. Same thing with ICP. ICP was down like 20 or 30%, I think, and now down less than 10. So things looking good. HBAR also now positive on the week. Same with BGB and Pengu. So a lot of the gains from the day kind of starting to flow into some of the weekly flows. We can see month is also back to positive. This did flip negative ever so slightly. It was just only for like a couple of days, but we are seeing now some of the greens being greener than the reds, even though we probably do have more reds than greens in here. It's just the gainers have been really quite big, particularly virtual, Aave, Curve, BGB, and HBAR are kind of the ones leading, but overall, we can see some other ones as well. So moving on, I did want to take a look at the Bitcoin chart to see kind of what we've been seeing over the past week or so. So we could see Bitcoin continuing its uptrend, looking pretty good. Obviously, we saw a little bit of volatility kind of between like the 3rd and like the 11th of December, kind of in this area. Obviously, we have this like mega candle that was just kind of major wicks both to the up and downside. We can see after that, though, it did kind of continue to make its move up. We did see some wicks up here, kind of at like the $108,000 to like $109,000 range. And then we saw a pretty decent sell-off. We saw a pretty big wick here. We thought maybe there's a recovery happening. Obviously another wick bringing us to the downside, and then we've seen a pretty strong bounce. We did hit the bottom of the Bollinger Band here. We can see this on several other tokens as well. If we look at Solana, we can see Solana was doing something similar. It was actually outside of the Bollinger Bands. When I did talk about Solana in my video a couple days back, we did talk about how usually when things are sitting outside of the Bollinger Bands, this is a very uncommon scenario, and so usually things kind of pull back in the Bollinger Bands. Now that's not to say that we were expecting per se some major bounce like this. We can see we found this kind of liquidity zone. We saw a lot of wicks into it, not really any too far below it, and then we're seeing a bounce back out. Given that we have seen the bounce back out, I would imagine we probably come up into this 211 to 228 range, but again, anything could happen. We have seen wicks up at this point, even kind of outside of this box, that then come down. So if we don't actually kind of make a strong continued move to the upside, we could potentially be seeing a wick back down into this like liquidity zone. Looking at a couple others, we can see something fairly similar. Let's look at XRP. XRP, again, same type of thing. We were bouncing kind of off the bottom of this Bollinger Band. We've now kind of bounced up a little bit. If we look at ADA, probably something very similar, where we can see the same thing. We actually were breaking outside of the bottom of the Bollinger Bands, and now we've kind of bounced back into it. Still kind of sitting towards the bottom side on ADA particularly. Maybe we see a return towards the mean of the Bollinger Bands. But as we can see, Cardano had a really strong pump, but it has kind of pulled back and not shown as much strength as something like XRP may have in that same period of time. And then also finally, we'll just take a quick look at Ethereum as well. Same type of thing. We were looking at kind of coming out of the bottom of this Bollinger Band, which again usually does not happen for a sustained period of time, and then we're seeing a bounce back up into the Bollinger Band area. Haven't really made it back towards the center area yet, so hard to say exactly if this will be a sustained bounce, but we can see we did kind of break the uptrend basically on all the larger cryptos. The uptrend has been broken, but we have started to see what seems to be at least a level of support kind of coming in for a lot of these major ones. If you are looking to trade Bitcoin, Ethereum, XRP, Jasmy, Cardano, any of those, feel free to use my link in the description below. I am still working with BTCC. In addition to the standard bonuses of up to $10,055 per user, they are doing that 10% bonus on first time deposits. This is a pure like extra bonus just for using my link in the description below. Since I am working with BTCC, they are giving a little bit of like an extra incentive to go on ahead and get signed up. In addition to all the bonuses that you can take advantage of, they have been around for 13 years. So if you are like, you essentially don't need to worry about BTCC being one of those like here today, gone tomorrow type of exchanges. They've been really, really good about essentially weathering the bear markets and all this stuff, at least up until this point. I mean, 13 years, they've been through 4 or 5 bear markets at this point in time. So pretty good track record overall. We can see 300 plus crypto futures as well. So if there's anything you're probably looking to trade, they likely have it. Also up to 500x leverage. Again, I would strongly discourage any sort of leverage that high. Anything above probably 10 to 20 is really kind of like quite gambly at that point if you don't really know what you're doing. And frankly, leverage of any amount is very gambly. So just be very, very careful if you are using leverage, but they do have that option if that is something you are looking for. Also, no VPN or KYC necessary, again, if this is something that is important to you. So like I said, go on ahead, use my link in the description below if you are looking for a new place to trade, because there's really some fantastic offers here if that's something you are interested in. Now, moving on, let's take a look at the market overview, because with the market overview, we can see a lot of things have changed in the past couple of days. With open interest, we are still seeing, pretty much holding pretty well up at this kind of over the $100 billion, the $60 billion range, $100 billion of open interest for like the total crypto market. We can also see for the liquidation maps, we were seeing there was a move favored to the upside. That's now almost been completely wiped out. We're now favoring a move to the downside just because we have seen such a strong bounce. If we look at the 7-day though, we can still see a move to the upside being favored. Again, if we see, basically if we break 100,000 again, that's going to liquidate almost 3 billion in leverage. So a decent chunk. Even if we go up to like 101,500, we're now close to 3.5 billion. Again, pretty strong move, or pretty decent amount of leverage being liquidated if we were to see a move like that. But again, we now are at this point in time where the market, or at least the liquidation map, is not showing consensus. Well, obviously one way is showing a move to the downside, the other way is showing a move to the upside. We also can see that the crypto fear and greed index has popped up a little bit. We're still not in extreme greed. We're kind of in the middle of greed currently. Like I was saying in the video a couple of days ago, I thought it could have been possible that we make it back into neutral. Very unlikely that we make it back into any sort of fear or extreme fear. Given the bounce that we've seen, I would say it's probably not going to happen that we hit into neutral. We'll probably start heading back up into the higher levels of greed, or potentially even extreme greed. But again, you never know for sure. I mean, this could just be a fake out because this was so unexpected. Maybe there are going to be a lot of people trying to dive back in out of FOMO because they were kind of expecting a further move to the downside. So maybe they're like underexposed to a level of what they normally like to be at. We can also see with the RSI heat map, we have moved back up into neutral. Still below average being 50. We're sitting at about 45.5, but we can see most projects moving out of the weak and into the neutral territory, even a couple starting to creep up into strong and overbought. We can see virtual. I mean, this is one that I think makes sense. Aave and Curve are some others that have moved really strongly, HBAR as well. So there's several coming in here that we've kind of seen over the past several days that have started to kind of show some strength. We have a couple, or I would say several, still in weak and very few still in oversold. But the overall market is kind of moving back toward a neutral zone, which I think is probably okay at this point in time. Things were getting a little over bearish over the past couple of days. As we can see, whenever you start to see multiple of the like major cryptos start to fall outside of the bottom range of the Bollinger Bands, it's probably not going to continue for too much longer, just because it's usually not how markets work. When things react that violently and that dramatically, it's usually not for a long period of time. Also, one thing that we can take a look at too, which is a little bit interesting, and I'm not really quite sure what to make of this, is Bitcoin balances on exchanges have continued to go down basically throughout this entire year, but particularly since the beginning of November, we can see a drop of almost 200,000 Bitcoin. We've seen a little bit of a spike up in the recent past here, but overall a pretty strong sell-off over this entire year, coming down close to about 500,000 Bitcoin coming off of exchanges. So there is the possibility that maybe we do see kind of a continued supply crunch. We are sitting up around 100,000. I think if we do see that 200 and 250,000 range that some people, I would call them more of the optimists in crypto, are calling for, I think we would need to see something in the range of a supply squeeze or something like that from Bitcoin to really see price kind of move that dramatically. Again, anything can happen. I personally am not thinking that 200 plus thousand is the most likely outcome for Bitcoin. I'm thinking probably somewhere around 150, maybe 120 on the like more bearish side potentially. That's probably where we end up. But if we are to see something in the 200 to 250,000 range, I think it'll be in large part because of some sort of supply squeeze that we would be seeing from exchanges and institutions and governments and all these types of people trying to get in. Also, we can see, looking at the Bitcoin market cap and looking at Bitcoin specifically in terms of Bitcoin dominance, we can see we are kind of starting to form a downtrend. We did make a lower low and then a lower high. So we can kind of see that maybe this is the start of alt season, right? The very, very, very beginnings where we are starting to see Bitcoin dominance kind of tick down and make lower lows and lower highs. Usually when alt season really kicks off, Bitcoin dominance really plummets pretty hard. We haven't really seen that yet, down only about 3.5% from the all-time highs, or not the all-time highs, but like the cycle highs that we saw, it basically just prior to 60%. So what happens with Bitcoin dominance over the next several months will be very telling in terms of kind of how we could expect to see an alt season play out. Conversely, obviously, what we can see on the other side is that we are continuing to make higher highs and higher lows from a macro perspective on the alt season, or on the alt market caps. This is the total too, so it's basically everything not including Bitcoin. So we can see, if we zoom in, well, from big picture, we can see obviously very much in an uptrend. We can see higher highs, higher lows all the way up. But if we zoom in a little bit and take just a closer look at the past couple of months, we can see, obviously, we saw that massive, like ridiculous run to the upside right after the US election. We have pulled back a decent bit from there. We did kind of touch a little bit past this 1.27 mark. We actually did come all the way back down. I believe this is to the 0.618 range. So we came all the way back just as a wick, basically, into the 0.618 range. Have recovered decently. We're kind of sitting between kind of these different both fib levels and then also just the normal like support and resistance levels that we have seen. We've most recently gotten close to the 786 range, and then from there, we are just kind of sitting right in the middle though, between kind of this 1.27 trillion, which we saw being kind of a top that we saw in mid-March, and then also this 786 range, and then also this 1.47, which is a top that we saw basically on the upswing of the prior bull market. So things looking pretty good overall with the alts. Again, we haven't really seen the alt season take off at the level at which we could potentially see. Again, if we're to zoom this out, we're gonna have to zoom out way far. But if we are to zoom out to like levels that we could potentially see this bear or this bull run, we could see, right now we're sitting at 1.4 trillion, potentially we're sitting at, 2.5. I believe this is the 1618. 3.8 is going to be about 3.77 is the 2618, and then up here we go to the 3618, up here 5 trillion potentially, and then if things go way crazy and we hit 4236, that's going to be at a 5.83 trillion. So potentially a long way up to go. Again, it's really hard to say. I think, as I've said kind of before on the channel, I think hitting this 1618 should be a pretty achievable thing to do. Us hitting an overall like $2.5 trillion market cap, that'd be just under a 2x from right now today, again in total market cap. And then I think it's possible, maybe not super likely, but definitely possible that we see this kind of 3.77 trillion at the 2618. That would be about 2.5x, I guess, from here. And then potentially, if we see things get a little wild, then we hit all the way up at 5 trillion at the 3618. That I would say is, in my opinion, relatively unlikely, but possible. And then that would be, what was that, about 4x from here, going up to hit that level. So that's kind of what we're looking at a potential alt season. Things could get a little wild from kind of what we're seeing there. So hopefully you found the information in this video useful. If you did, please do give me a like and subscribe, because it really does help me out. Also, if you have any comments, questions, concerns, anything like that, just feel free to drop those in the comment section below. I do try to read and respond to all of those. Given the holidays, it's become a little bit more difficult for me to be super timely with those, but I do still try to read and respond to all of them. I might just be a little bit slow than what I have been in the past. Anyway, thank you guys for tuning in. We'll see you in the next episode. And if you celebrate Christmas or Hanukkah or whatever, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, all that good stuff. And we'll see you in the next one.